Hi, Mary Beth. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. You and I have already chatted a little bit pre recording about our love for all things Google Doc and being organized. So I'm so excited to get to learn from you at the symposium, but also to get to know you a little bit more today. Would you like to introduce yourself to our community?
Hi, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Mary Beth Kelty. I'm a teacher for the visually impaired and a certified orientation and mobility specialist. I have some grown kids and some grandbabies, and I've worked with people with various type of disabilities pretty much my whole career. So,
Okay, so what is your whole career? And babies and
oh my
grandbabies? Oh my gosh, I cannot wait
goodness.
to get to that stage in life.
It's fun, but it can also be
Oh,
hectic.
psh,
So,
so can
yeah.
being a single mom.
True. I've been that too. So yeah. Um, so my whole career, I started off in college thinking I was going to be a third grade teacher. That was what I really wanted to do in
Yeah.
life. Really wanted to be a third grade teacher. I've never taught third grade.
Third grade is where it's at. I did the same thing
Apparently,
with
it's where I thought I
kindergarten.
wanted to be.
Yeah.
But it really, like, I had to get a job, and so I started teaching at a Head Start, and then I went into a residential treatment facility for students with behavioral needs, and they had started taking students with profound autism and other disabilities. And so I started working with them. Did not know if I could handle it because I was not trained
Mhm.
in that area at all. Quickly learned that I loved it and that that's where I needed to be. Um, worked, went into a virtual school and taught for a virtual school at the residential facility for quite a period of time. And then I transitioned, I taught at home virtually to students all over the state of Ohio for many years with the highest needs students. And fun fact, during that time, I had a visually impaired student. And guess what we did for him? We gave him a great big screen and tangible objects and went, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Um, we were under prepared. And so all that time I never heard the term TVI,
Mhm.
never had any idea. Um, Worked with those students for a long time, fell in love with them. They still stay in touch with me.
Aw.
Their families do. And then I needed to be out of virtual education. Like I needed to shift gears just for my own sanity and started teaching at a self contained DD school here in Ohio. Loved it, loved my kids there. But I had this student who had something called CVI. I
Mm.
had no idea what that was. I had like no way to understand this kiddo. He had multiple other disabilities as well. Um, so as many of our CVI kids do. And I was like, I don't know how to help him. And all of a sudden, like this person comes into my room and goes, "Hi, I'm the TVI. I'm going to take him to go and work with him now." And I went, "What?"
Oh, oh
And
gosh.
then the aide, she would just he had a personal aide, and she would just bring all of these things out, and I would say, Okay, what is this for? Like, what? How do you use this with him?" I don't know. Sue just gave it to me. Like, okay, but how do I use it?
Yeah.
What is it for? What is this condition? And so I started digging into it, and then I worked with him and another student who was visually impaired, had a different type of impairment, and worked with her, worked with this TVI for a couple of years, and went, I really like this, and I'm not helping my students because I don't know enough.
Mm.
An opportunity came up to get my TVI license through Shawnee State. And I was like, okay, well, I'll get that license and then I can really help these kiddos because I don't know enough and I'm failing them. Like I really felt like I was not giving, I didn't have enough knowledge
Mhm.
in visual impairments to help them. And so I got the license fully expecting to stay there and just help those kids because I knew more were coming.
Yeah.
Like we have other kids in lower grades that were going to be coming to me. Um, And then I was offered a position to be a full-time itinerant.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I've been doing that the last couple of years and love it.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But I said to them, I said, okay, if I take this position, I still get to go to my old school.
Mhm.
So I still see them and
Aw.
still get to work with them, and I love them to bits.
Oh, I love that so much. It sounds like your journey has had lots of different, like, points that got you to where you are, but all of the experiences, you probably bring those into your TVI experience because you know what it's like to be the teacher, and you're probably not just pulling the kid out and sending the para back with devices.
No.
And, like, I know a lot of us do that. I've done that in the past. I'm
Right.
O&M, not TVI. I have my TVI degree, but after 16 years, I probably need another one if I'm gonna teach it. But, there's just not enough time because I have to, like, I maybe have 5 minutes after I drop off my student, and then I have to leave, and I have to go
Rats.
fight traffic, and as much as I might,
Mhm.
try to push in, especially with my kids with multiple impairments, once I step into the classroom, then the teacher says, "Oh, your teacher is here," and then they go somewhere else. So it's, to nobody's fault, but I'm sure that you have ways that you can collaborate, and I'm sure that you bring your perspective from having all of those years of experience, and you were teaching virtually. What?
Way before it was cool.
Yeah.
Way before COVID. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, when COVID hit, they all just went, "Well, you're the virtual teacher." So I just picked that slack up too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to. But it was good. It was good for all of my students who needed to continue to be virtual even after we came back.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I really have the opportunity to see both sides of it. I have teachers who are like, well, I don't have time for that. I have this and I have that. And so I'm able to understand
Mhm.
that because I get it. You don't have time to do certain tasks, but I can help you find ways and I can help, come into the classroom and see a different side of things. Plus, I have tons of experience with students with multiple disabilities, with students who have multiple things going on. And so I have that opportunity to really work with a student in a different way. I think a lot of times a teacher who works with in a classroom that's self-contained, especially, or that's, a special group of students, um, I feel like oftentimes they become very protective of their students.
Mhm.
I did. I know they do too. And so I come into the room and I might expect something of their student that they don't believe their student can
Yeah.
do. Um, but I very quickly show them, I am educated. I have a lot of experience doing this, and I truly believe your student can do this with the right tools. And I'm able to show them, look what your student can do. If we give them the right accommodations and the right modifications, they can do these things. And so they back off being so protective after that. They recognize, okay, she knows what she's doing.
Yeah, I bet a lot of teachers feel that way because they don't really know us. And
Right,
relationship building is really hard and it's really important. And it can also be kind of overlooked because we aren't taught how to build relationships with the teachers when we're going through college. It's kind
right,
of like the paperwork aspect that you're talking about. Those things aren't the main focus, and not saying that they need to be, but if we can learn how to build those relationships and push in and do it gently and build the relationships
mhm,
with the teachers, we go from a multidisciplinary model to maybe an interdisciplinary model at least, and then we can
yes,
start to like really make change. And I think it's when we all come together and lean on one another, not just at the IEP meetings that it happens.
yes. I agree with you. So many times, when I first started as a TVI, I recognized I had to have a relationship with students, and I was really good at building relationships with students. I'd done that for years, and I didn't understand how much and how important it was to have a relationship with those teachers, to get them to trust me.
Yeah.
Because if they trust me and they will work, then they will start to work with me and they will start to use the equipment that's in the classroom and they will start to ask me questions and that was really important to me, to make sure that they are, we're on the same side. I'm not coming in and like, I think a lot of times teachers think that we're going to come in and just like we come in really quick because we don't have time, and we say, here, use this tool. And then we very quickly show them how to use it and we run away because we have a bazillion other students to see and other things to do and traffic to fight and paperwork to do and all these other things. But if I just take a little extra time to, send them a follow up email or a few extra minutes to work with them or a few minutes to just kind of walk past their door and like, thumbs up, everything okay?
Mhm.
As I walk past to get another student, then they recognize they aren't alone in that. I'm still here. I'm still here to
Yes.
support them. I'm still going to work with them. I want to be their support system. I want them to come to me and ask me questions. And so I use every tool in the toolbox to make sure they know that they're supported.
I love that. And I'll add a few things as a contract O&M. One of the things that I make sure that I do when I'm getting hired on is I have a in person if possible, but if not, then virtual sit down with the admins as well. Because when you're W-2, the admins know you, they hired you, right? But for
Right.
me, I'm getting hired literally just to like check a legal box. These people do not care. I am the furthest on their list. They're like, "Oh, Johnny needs O&M. What's O&M? Let's find one of those." And
Right.
then, I come in and so I make sure that we start our relationship off on the right foot. Otherwise, I'm not seeing the sped director. Like I have a sped director. I have not seen him in 2 years. Okay, because I don't go to campus because I'm O&M and their school, that one specific school is specifically for athletes and so they have a shorter day. So I see the student after school. So we're out and about in the community. This sped director just trusts me. Um but had I not done that, and typically sped directors just follow my lead. Like, okay, what do we do now? Do you send me a contract? And I could easily be like, yeah, I'll send you a contract. You sign it. I show up. I just work with the kids. But I know that if something's going to happen down the road, it's probably not going to be like a good thing happening. So I want them to know that we have a positive relationship. And then you mentioned also the way that you communicate with the teachers is a quick thumbs up as you're walking past and just checking in. And I love that because I think a lot of times we get stuck in not communicating unless there's an issue or sending
Right.
long emails with all of our thoughts and really, I mean, nobody has the time or capacity or energy for long emails. But if you make it a habit to send a quick text and just how are you doing? How is everything going? They're much more likely to respond. And like you said, just walking past the door, thumbs up, like, are you okay? I just want to check in. How's everything? And they're more likely to start to trust you. And I love the fact that you mentioned those things.
Yeah. I absolutely love to, I got to a couple of really big buildings and I don't need to see every student every time I'm in the building.
Mm.
So sometimes it is simple as just walking past the door. And if I see that teacher, I just kind of like everything good, just make a little eye contact. And they know that I'm in the building if they need me.
Mhm.
They know that I'm around. I don't need to go and interrupt their school day. I don't need to go see that student. I don't need to interrupt that student's day. Because if that student sees me, some of them really want to leave class and get out of
Mhm.
work, or they just really want to spend time with me, or they want my my reward that I have a little goodie basket that I carry around. And so they want those things, and they, for whatever reason, they want out of the classroom, and I don't want to pull them if I don't have to. And sometimes I'm too busy to just pull them just to say hi.
Yeah.
um, so it's just a great way to let teachers know that I'm available. I also, kind of thinking of that paperwork side of it, I will just kind of have some like draft emails that I'll just kind of randomly like set up through my Gmail and just like boop boop, put their information in there and just like send it out to a bunch of them. Just, oh hey, and it's just something I prepare at the beginning of the year, and it's just got some basic information in it. Have a couple set up like for different things, and hey, I ran across this website, and it had this information in it,
Mm.
and this would be really helpful for the student. And or a student with you have a student with CVI in your room. I found this really great thing, and then I'll send it to a bunch of them,
What
and
a
then
yeah.
yeah.
I love that. Okay, before we were recording, you talked about a story about when you first started as a TVI. Can we segue into that because you're already starting to talk about the paperwork, and I was going to bring that up too with um, making things easier for you. But will you share that story, please?
When I started as a TVI, I knew the TVI who had worked with me before, and she was going to continue being my mentor, even though she was moving on to a different role. And I walk into the office, and there sits before me my desk, and on the floor are these 6 milk cartons, and there are these big plastic crates, and there are 3 ring binders in it, the big chunky ones. And I said, well, what is this? And she said, we stick these in your car, and then you drive them to all the school districts, and each binder is a different district, and it's got all the kids information in there. And so then when you go in a school, you take that binder for that kid for that school out, and then you go in, and that's how you keep track of all your paperwork. What? Like, first of all, you've already told me that I have to put other things in my car, and my car is a walking train wreck at all times because there's so much stuff in it now.
Yes.
You've already told me I need to carry a functional vision assessment and this and this and this, and I need to have CVI things in there. And now I'm supposed to fit 6 milk crates in there. I'm going to need a delivery truck, like to drive around school districts. I was in shock, and I went, there has to be a better way. And she went, no, that's what we do.
Oh, that's what we do. Always. It's always that. This is how it's always been. Yes.
And I was like, well, what all is in there? And so she starts showing me, and I was like, could I just like put that in a Google Doc or something? Like, and she was like, oh no. And she's like, we have to put it in their folders. I was like, well, what are we putting in their folders? And then another, like the OTs and PTs, they had showed the supervisor, my same supervisor, how they were using Google Docs.
Mm.
And I was like, got it. I like, as soon as I saw it, I've used those type of things before, and I was like, got it. And so I went home and I started playing with it and deciding how I wanted to do it, and it took so much time
Mhm.
first time. And she was like, my mentor, she was like, if you just grabbed the 3 ring binders, you wouldn't have to be spending all this time on that. And I don't know, you're taking all this stuff home, you don't have to take it home and do it. It's kind of like saved my life at the end of it. And so now I just make sure I have my phone or my tablet or my computer, and I can do it all. And no more 3 ring binders, and no more 6 milk crates.
And you don't have to drive a delivery truck.
Don't have to drive a delivery truck.
I find
A
that
Jeep
hilarious.
Compass that's packed.
You what?
Just a Jeep Compass that's packed.
Probably is. We've had so many webinars on like how to keep your trunk organized. I don't have that issue as much because I'm O&M, and I think I'm also very lazy. I think I'm a very lazy materials kind of teacher where I'm like, okay, I will carry a Wheatley, and if you cannot
Yeah,
make it out of a Wheatley and like I have some
can't
other
make.
things, then like
Yeah,
I'm probably gonna find a different way to teach you this. But
yeah,
but I also am O&M, so I have a little bit more wiggle room. But I think you touched on something that was coming up for me as you were talking is, oh my gosh, that takes so much time. And oh, but I've always done it this way. And one thing that comes to mind is, yeah, it does take time. Like it takes me time at the beginning of every school year to set up all of my Google Calendar with all of my schedule in it. It takes time for me to set up all my folders in my Google Drive. It takes time for me to figure out what worked and what didn't work from last year from my data collection. It takes time for me to
yes,
like figure all that out. What information do I need? Where do I need it? And I will say that time is the best time that I probably spend all year because it's a return of your investment. And I don't think that we as teachers are taught at a higher level. Let's just think money, right? Money wise, if you're a millionaire, you get there by investing your money. You don't get there by having a 9 to 5, just a 9 to 5. You get there by investing the money and having the money work for you. But you have to take a portion of that money and put it away. And it hurts a little bit. Like when I first started investing, I was like, oh, this is my budget is not, I don't love this, but I want retirement. So I'm going to have to do it.
Right.
And I think if we could look at our time in that way, if we could take ourselves out of, just this, I'm a teacher, I have this much time, I have to get all these things done, and we can take a day and invest that time, it will come back to you tenfold throughout the year. Because even now, what I can do with my, I have, because I run Allied, I have an assistant, and I can tell her, okay, I need all these invoices sent. And if this is the information isn't here, check my Google Calendar, because my Google Calendar will be correct. If I forgot to take data that one day, okay, I'll go back and do the data. She doesn't have access to the data anyway. All she has access to is like the time. And so by me taking that time and putting the information in my Google Calendar at the very beginning and keeping up with it, of course, it
Of
makes
course.
things so much easier. Or making groups for my teachers, that simple task of like at the beginning of the year, what are my teaching teams? This student has all these teachers here. I need a Google contact group for them, or this school or whatever it is. Man, then nobody gets missed out on meetings, and everybody has what they need. And Google is FERPA compliant as long as you have the right
Yes.
kind of email address. So,
And what I love about it is that I can take that time, and it's not just time to invest in the future, but it's time to invest in right then, because some of my kids I don't see every single day or every single week even. And so I get a chance to refresh myself. I get a
mm,
chance to look at, okay, what is this kid's IP? What is their what specific goals have we been working on? What do we need to do in the future? And I get to rethink
mm,
that student for and refresh myself on that student's specific needs for those few minutes that I'm working on his or
wow.
her paperwork. So many times we can get lost in the shuffle and we go through the motions. Um, and I really need that time sometimes to just refresh my brain.
Mhm.
What every Tell me everything about this student again.
Yeah.
I've known it. I of course worked with this student for maybe 2 or 3 years, but I need a refresher course. Tell me everything about this student. And I get that in those few minutes of going through that paperwork and refreshing my Google Docs. And it gives me sometimes it'll give me a total new outlook on a student.
Right. So when you're doing that, like you're sitting down at the beginning of the year, whenever you do it, can you tell me like the first steps that you take when you do that?
Usually, I start off by looking at the student's school information. So, oftentimes, they have an ETR or an IEP, like an evaluation team report,
Mhm.
which is done every 3 years, and an IEP, an individual education plan, which is done every year. And normally, I've been a part of those meetings, but sometimes the evaluation is a couple of years old. Maybe we're going to be getting ready to do it again that year. So, I haven't really evaluated that student in a couple of years. And so, maybe I've forgotten some information that I want to think about, and so I'm definitely looking at things like dates because I want to make sure I'm in compliant. I want to make sure that teacher knows that I know when those dates are and they know when the dates are.
Mhm.
And I want to make sure my dates are right. Sometimes they aren't. Sometimes I've taken information in and they've gone, oh no, we had to, I don't know, maybe do an update or whatever, and the date has been changed. Um, so I'm looking at that information. I'm looking at my previous year's tracking
Mm.
to see what data I collected in the last year and where I need to go from that. Did that data collection work? Did it work well? do I need to change anything now that, do I need to change what's in my Google form that I'm creating? What's going to make it easier on me when I'm sitting there working with the student or right after I've worked with the student? Because it depends on the student. Sometimes I'm collecting data at the same time I'm working with them. Sometimes I'm waiting until right afterwards.
Yeah.
And so, with being in O&M, it'd be really hard while you're walking down the street with a student to have your tablet out writing things. But, sometimes, if I'm working on like typing words per minute, they've got their computer there working and I've got mine.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of typing their words per minute. Um, it all depends on the student and their needs. But I'm trying to decide, is that form going to be enough for me? Do I need to change any information in that form? And then I'm looking at what type of emails am I going to be sending out? Who am I going to send emails to? Um, so I can make those same kind of contacts. Um, so I can make those same type of information. Who is going to want to know when I am seeing the student? So am I going to be sharing my Google Calendar information with anyone? Is the parent super involved? Does the parent want to know that information when I'm seeing that student? Does a teacher or an administrator want to know? Now, most of them, they don't care. They don't want to know. They don't need to know. But I have had some parents who are really involved and they want to know how well they did when they met with me, how they're doing on their braille or how they're doing with a certain skill. And so I share it with them. Then they can go into the Google Doc, click on the link, and they can see the tracking information. So they can see all the information that I've placed in there and they know exactly how their student's doing. And that prevents me from having to worry about remembering to make a phone call.
Yeah.
They don't have to try to track me down, and everybody can see it when they need to.
That is next level. Adding the Google Doc in the event calendar. Is that what you do?
Yes. So what I do is my Google form,
Yeah.
um, because honestly, I see so many kids, and so many times my week changes. Like I'll be told about a meeting the day before it happens, and then I have to shift everybody
Yeah.
around. And so I sometimes I literally wake up and I have to look at my calendar to know where I'm going.
Mhm.
And then like, where am I going next? And so from my Google Calendar, I can click the event and then click the data form, my Google form,
Yeah.
fill out my data. If I wanted to, and if I have it set up for that student, I could technically go in and see the data.
Yeah.
So I can, either fill out a form, I can see data. I've had to use it a couple of times to say, but you did say that on this date because I wrote it down.
Yeah.
See? Because every time, like even if I'm just walking past a room and I'm doing the thumbs up,
Yeah.
I go in and I say, you know, consult with that teacher, thumbs up.
Yeah.
You know, I walked past, they said there was no problem on this date. Because if later, unfortunately, I've had situations where someone has said, well, they haven't talked to me all year.
Mm.
Or, I have really strange things that have happened, and not very often. Most everyone has been great. But I have had situations, and not just in the years of teaching as a visual impairment, if someone with, TVI, but in all my years of experience, I've had situations come up where, oh, they didn't say that. They didn't email that. They didn't do this.
Mm.
They didn't. I have it all.
Yeah.
I have all of these times where I walk past your room or we've talked about this, or maybe you did say that you needed a tool and I brought it to you on this date.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I always put all that stuff into them.
I cannot wait to see your Google Forms. I wish I could learn from you in July and August because September feels so far away at this point.
Too far
I
away.
wanna
And
redo them
then
all.
by then you're already into your school year and you don't have time to worry about it anymore. But honestly, the form is very, very simple. I keep it super, super simple because I just have a
Yeah.
space in the form and I can type whatever I want into that space. And that allows me to, just be able to put teacher said, I brought, I can
Mm.
put anything into that. student said, or student was there but was having a really bad day. So we didn't even
Yeah.
learn Braille today. We just talked about their day, you know. So those type of things, I can put their information in there,
I
whatever I need to put.
Yeah, I cannot wait. I'm gonna end up redoing all my forms after the symposium. I can
You
tell.
will.
I'm already like fall break. I'm gonna plan for fall break because I'm gonna have to sit down and redo this. That's such a great idea. I don't take as much data, and I recently had a situation where because I invoice for everything that I do, right? But I'm not going to invoice for a phone call. And I had a student who was in and out of the hospital all year, and she lives 45 minutes to an hour away. And so I would just call and ask, is she there? And then they would say no. And I didn't write it down because I wasn't invoicing for it. But then come the end of the school year, she wasn't there for a full month. And I was like, hey, what are we going to do about these? And the admin said, oh, well, it should be documented in your whatever like paperwork, and I had not thought to document it because I didn't anticipate her missing school for a full month every time that I called. And
Right,
because I can't call every single day, and I can't go there every
right,
single day. And so I was like, oh, well, legally I can get out of this pickle. And I was able to get out of it. And the admin approved comp time for the summer. But had that admin been adamant
yeah,
about that, I would
right,
be in so much trouble right now because I just didn't think to write down when I called because it wasn't 15 minutes worth of work.
right.
So I
A-
need to,
And I don't always document every single phone call.
yeah.
I probably should. But I don't do as many phone calls. Now, if I'm talking to a parent or if I'm interviewing a parent for like an FEA or something like that, I definitely do document that.
Mhm.
I do document if I go to the school and the student's not there, I document that.
Yeah.
And then emails, I don't typically document those, but I have proof that I've sent those or, the responses back. I don't delete any of those things. So
Yeah.
I always have
I'm
information.
looking forward to seeing what you have in your Google Docs. Will you run through with me what documents you typically have in a student's folder? Like, as far as your Google folders, right? We love them, you and I, because we know that
Yes.
you can access
Yes.
them from anywhere. They're FERPA compliant.
Yes.
I will make folders and send them to the parents and like, hey, you can add whatever you want to this folder. All of my documents are in this folder. You can see everything that I'm doing. It's all for book compliance, so it's no problem. And even as contract, right? I just pay for the Google Suite. It's like $50. I don't know. I have a website, and so I just like pay for it extra on top.
Well, yeah.
But even before I had a website, I just paid for the extra one. It's the free one, you guys, is not FERPA compliant. The paid one, I believe, is FERPA and HIPAA compliant. And but I mean, it's technically a tax write off, and you should probably have it anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but I have certain things in my folders that keep me organized. What do you have in your folders?
I always put their IEP and their ETR
Okay.
for that year. So I do it per year. I literally have a different folder for every single school year, and it takes me a ton of time to bring them over. But it just it's my way of staying
Yeah.
sane for that year. I always have that information. If I've written notes about that student, like in a Google Doc, say if I'm doing an observation on a student, that is in there.
Mhm.
Uh, if I do their functional vision assessment and things like that, sometimes that's in there. I'm going to be honest, it's not always in there. That's my next goal is to always scan because we have to do those by paper. I
Mhm.
haven't figured out why yet. The day I figure out why, because no one ever sees
Yeah.
them, they will be virtual. That's my next task to make that a virtual thing. And then so some of that information is in there. Their Google form
Yeah.
that I keep track of their information. The Google Forms track all of the information from that Google form is also in there. Um, Anything that a parent were to give me, any medical records or anything like that, any records that I get from the school are always uploaded into there.
Yeah. So it sounds like you and I have the same kind of setup. I saw once, I think it was an OT in an IEP meeting. She had a student profile sheet, and she did have like it was a notebooky thing, but I just transferred it into a Google for or Google Doc after that. And so in all my folders, I have one main folder for the year, and I like to have my caseload at a glance because sometimes I'm like, who has you call it ETR, we call it an FIE. Who has an FIE coming up this year? At the beginning of the year I set all of those things up. And I also want to make sure that I know how many minutes each student needs
Yes.
because the moment I start
That's on my form.
to yes. Yeah.
That's on their form. When I open their form, I know how many minutes.
Oh, you have
It's at the
one
top of their form with their name.
I'll start adding that. I think I'll add that to
Yeah.
like the description part too, because
Yes.
the moment I start to forget that, it's so hard for me to reschedule because scheduling is such a thing for us. So I
Yes.
have that. I have that on like a yearly folder, and then I do transfer their folders every single year. And sometimes it'll be I tried shortcuts. I kind of like that. I can't tell if it takes up too much bandwidth or just making a new folder. But then all of um their student profile sheet. I also do my progress reports outside of the software because sometimes the software gets wonkadoodle. And so I do my progress reports and then I copy them in. So my progress reports, all my evals and everything like that, and their form and then the responses too. So it sounds like we have about the same kind of stuff in there.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. Okay.
I like the idea of having a data sheet.
Like,
Yeah, just having all their basic information. Normally, I end up pulling up their IEP because their IEP will have all that information on it too. But sometimes that's not always correct information. So,
that's true. And what do you mean by data sheet that I said?
well, I'm thinking like data sheet, like their information, like their address, their
Yes.
phone numbers, and all of that.
Yeah.
Is that what you have? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I normally get that off of their IEP.
Yeah, exactly. So there I have a student profile sheet where it has like the student's name and then their data. I don't really take their address because I don't need it, but their parents' name, their parents' information, their age, their etiology, things of that nature go on the top. And then if I'm in meetings and I take notes in meetings or something and I don't want to be in the form, then that's where that'll go. The form has basically taken over the student profile sheet now that I use Google Forms. Um, but if I'm taking data or having a conversation with a parent, then I'll type in that during the conversation. Or if a meeting's happening, and typically as contract, I don't know if this happens to you, but I don't have access to the Wi-Fi at the schools that I go to. So I put it on offline and then I can use it there. And I don't necessarily have access to my form. And then later I can go in and transfer it, but oftentimes I don't really need it because it's just when you're having a conversation with a parent for eval purposes, it's so much information that
Yes, true.
that just doesn't need to be in with their like weekly data. So yeah,
Right.
that's what I have in there, and it seems to work really well. But of course, everything can get better. So
Yes, always. I like the idea of using my when I can't get into a school's
yeah,
Wi-Fi, I use my phone for hotspot.
yeah,
So it's a little bit more on my phone bill every month, but at least I have guaranteed Wi-Fi when I go
yeah,
places.
yeah. I don't typically have too much of an issue, but meetings, then I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I just have to pull everything up. And now I don't have a laptop. I only have my iPad. So everything just gets pulled up ahead of time. I turn on the offline option and we're good to go. Oh, Mary Beth, it's been such a pleasure to get to chat with you. I think you and I very much so value our time and workload efficiency and being able to take care of our paperwork in a nice manner and focus on teaching, right? Because I like to teach about the paperwork side because I don't want to do it very much.
I want to do it.
No,
Yeah.
I just want it to be easy. 1 minute Google form at the end of my lesson, and I call it good. But I'd love to ask you one last question. If you could give our community one piece of advice to help them take a step forward in being better VI specialists, what would that be?
I think it's that you as much as we all love our students and we want to be in that world and we want to be working with our students all the time, that the documentation side of it is so valuable and it's so important. That is what allows us to do our jobs to the best of our abilities. It is the backbone of what we do. And so taking care of that and being on top of that is super important. So know your students, and you know your students by learning their paperwork, unfortunately. But know your students and know them through their paperwork, and know your paperwork. Document it.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I can't wait to learn from you more at the TVI Symposium this September.
I can't wait to be there.
Okay.